Hey there, wonderful and awesome people of the Enlightened Coach tribe. Back with another one of my 30 dates with Dax. I believe this is date number 5. We've gotten that far into it already. Hope you've been enjoying the series so far. And once again, if you have any questions that you want to pose, please do. That's what I'm here for. I know that there's probably only about another 4 or 5 questions sitting in the tribe at the moment, so we're not going to get to 30 unless you ask. So this really is a case of don't ask, don't get. Excuse me. So today's question comes from Graham Palk. He says, how to get your first 6K client. Up until recently, I've had several practice clients and feel ready to go pro, as it were. I'm good, but still lots to learn at coaching and public speaking. But in terms of the tools, I know them, but then I'm struggling to use them, like a plumber with a bad back. I have and know how to use the tools, but struggling to overcome myself and find the clients to work with. Look, I think that's going to be a really common question. Ultimately, really what's being asked here is, most people would ask this in the terms, how do I attract higher ticket clients, right? So look, regardless, whenever I talk about high ticket, I don't care what your number is. High ticket for you is essentially that uncomfortable number that you are not used to asking for, or that you experience a little bit of fear around. So, I currently charge £75,000 a year to work one-to-one with my clients. That some people would say, wow, that's high ticket. Other people would say, I charge £500 and I crap myself every time I ask for money. Well, that's still kind of high ticket then, right? So we just release the idea of high ticket being a specific number and start moving into a simple idea that high ticket sort of like starts to become a bit of a threshold where you yourself are uncomfortable with asking for the money. Well, that starts to give us a little bit of a hint about what needs to be done. Let me just pull up some notes I'll make for Graham. Right. So look, as always, this is not about whether you can or can't, or whether there are other people out there who can or can't attract 6K clients. It's not about whether somebody will pay $6,000 for coaching. Absolutely, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, there are plenty of people out there that aren't even batting an eyelid at 6K, and there are plenty of people out, clients out there who likewise wouldn't bat an eyelid about having to pay it. Likewise, other numbers like 60, or, there are some people out there being charged over $1 million a year for coaching with the likes of Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard and such, right? There are people there that will pay it. So it's not the question of, is there enough people in the world to pay me 6K, and, kind of who do I need to, or what do I need to start doing in order to persuade people to part with their hard-earned cash? This is really about our feelings of ability, worthiness, and belief that we can do the things that we say we need to do, or that we believe we need to do in order to ask for that kind of money. In other words, we need to feel good about asking for it. And if we don't feel good about asking for it, it really does come down to several things, right? It usually comes down to simple belief in our skill, belief in our worthiness, belief in the value of the thing. Particularly if you're a coach, let's say you've never spent $6,000 on another coach, and that's a really uncomfortable amount of money for you to part with. Well, when you find yourself in that position and you're really uncomfortable, you say, I wouldn't spend that on a coach. You're very unlikely to be the kind of person who's comfortable stepping up and asking somebody else to spend that on you, right? It's a slightly metaphysical, if you will, but it just more often than not happens to be true. There are some people who are really, really comfortable just throwing wild numbers out into the air and kind of, hoping that kind of wild luck and bullshit will carry it off. But most people, most coaches especially, who generally tend to be pretty heart-centered, really struggle with asking for amounts of money that they don't really feel are like fair or commensurate with the outcome. And then that leads to the next part of this, which is a really simple question. Do you believe that you can deliver a 6K result? Now, initially, every coach I speak to will say yes. Flip it then. Okay, so if you believe that what you're about to deliver is absolutely, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, worth 6K, why wouldn't you ask for it? Because, if I was going to sell you this notepad, and I said the notepad costs £2, £3, whatever it happens to be, right? And you said, okay, yeah, kind of, it seems to be, it's a big notepad, and it's got a lot of stuff on it, and it's got a lot of space and all that. Yeah, I'm quite happy to spend that. And I felt good about it. I said, yeah, this is great. It's definitely worth it. Then I wouldn't have a problem selling it to you. If, on the other hand, I'd already filled the pages with all of my own notes, or there was literally just like 2 pages of empty space left, I might start to feel a little bit of doubt about, oh God, can I really do that? Can I really, ship that out to them and have the person pissed off at me that they didn't get what they expected? And that's really what this comes down to. That was a very long-winded way of saying this, right? Is that the biggest part of this is often the gap between the promises that we think we need to make in order to justify an amount of money versus the promises that we believe we can keep. So think about that, right? Kind of, I want to kind of sell a 6K, and I'm not used to selling 6K, so I think I'm supposed to say all this cool copyrighty stuff and throw all these big one-liners out there and kind of hit you in the emotional kind of hard drive, so to speak, right? So I put all that stuff out there, but the entire time I'm saying, shit, can my program really do that? Like, will it really accomplish that? Will that person really get that level of results? And that in itself leads to the huge disconnect, right? If it leads to a huge disconnect in you, it will absolutely definitely lead to a huge disconnect in the client, but it also leads to a disconnect in your ability to stand behind the message, to produce enough content that attracts people, to have enough conversations, to invite enough people to exploration and trial sessions and all that kind of stuff. It will go down massively because in the back of your mind the entire time is, can what I'm promising really do that? So first off, think about it again, right? Is the result that I'm promising a promise that I really believe the program can get, and is it worth the amount of money that I'm charging for that? So we've got a couple of different things here. So look, if there's a gap between those things, right? If there's a big gap between here's what I'm promising and here's what I'm promising and here's what I really believe can be accomplished, but kind of there's this gap between them, you're very unlikely to keep making offers. Right? We want to close the gap down, right? Ideally, what you promise should be exactly what you're able to deliver on, or flip it the other way. What I promise is this, but what they get is so much more. And now you're in the perfect position, regardless of the amount of money that you charge. So revisit what you're offering, revisit what you're promising, and very often you'll find that because we've been exposed to so much sales and marketing bullshit, we feel the need to really promise huge. But we're not 100% behind that promise, but we feel, well, how am I going to sell it if I'm not promising huge? Keep revisiting and even reducing the size of your promise. Keep pulling it back and pulling it back and pulling it back and pulling it back until you say, well, do you know what? Like right now, I feel brilliant that I could deliver that. No, so I'm not even telling you to pull back the price. I'm telling you to pull back the promise. Right? Pull back the promise. Keep doing that until you say, well, I feel really good about being able to do this, but in my first iteration of this program, I promised that you'd never have a relationship problem ever again, and that the world would beat up after your door, and you get 500 new clients out of this new program, and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, shit, I hope that happens. Now you're coming at it with doubt, right? So revisit and keep revisiting and reducing the promise until it's one that you can get 100%, 1,000%, 1,000,000% behind. I'm absolutely standing behind that. Once you feel awesome about the promise, now start to extend the imagined scope and impact beyond how you currently see it. So, for example, we're not increasing the size of the promise. It's not something we're going to verbalize to the client. It's something that you're going to verbalize internally. So, for example, let's say you're doing health coaching with a mother, and she is, she's your ideal client, or the kind of client that you specialize in working with is a mother. She's highly stressed out. She's holding down a professional career, or at least a job. She, kind of because of how she feels about all of that side of stuff, she doesn't take care of herself very well on the health front. Because of that side of things, she's less sexually intimate with a partner, and they're not dating as much and all that kind of stuff. Because of that, the stress in the household is kind of, mum and dad are often bickering and arguing, and the kids are feeling the impact. So, think about all of the ways in which the problem you're helping to solve, in other words, the promise that you're making, think about all of the other ways in which, I'll call her Mary, right? In which Mary will kind of be helped by you. So, for example, in your mind, this was a program, a 6K coaching program around kind of health and losing some weight and all the rest of it. And then you're like, 6K for that? Is that worth it? Like, would somebody pay that? Yes, they would, but kind of your question is valid, right? Would they pay it? Well, people will pay it if you ask enough of the right people. But you won't ask enough of the right people until you truly believe in the amount. So you can see this little catch-22. So here's what we do. this is the example, right? We now start to think about Mary getting her health coaching as a result of her health coaching, feeling so much more energetic and exuberant and joyful when she gets home, and because of that, not bickering with her husband quite so much. Because of that, they start to have kind of more date nights and more intimacy and more sex, and because of that, there's kind of the general aura and energy around the home is better. There's more energy for the kids. They do stuff like start to think about how your work doesn't just kind of coach Mary, but how it affects her through all of the other areas that are unspoken, right? You don't even have to be having this conversation with Mary right from the get-go. You don't have to promise all of those changes. In fact, she might call bullshit on you if you do, right? But you need to know what the ripples in the pond are, how your coaching works through the client. So, for example, I'm very clear, and people say, wow, how can you charge somebody $75K for coaching? That's a crazy amount of money. I'm really comfortable with it. I feel really good about asking for that amount of money, because I'm not saying, well, let's see who I can get. I'm saying, wow, these people, they generally tend to be, they have large followings, they have large businesses. Some of them are heads of state and stuff like that. Some of them are CEOs of huge companies. Wow, think of all of the downstream of all the lives changing as a result of a measly 75,000. In my mind, that's how I think about it. Wow, thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of lives are going to change as the downstream effect of this teeny investment. And it's not just a mental trick. I'm not just asking you to think positive. I'm not asking you to make shit up. I'm asking you to think your way through, like, what are the ripples in the pond? What are the repercussions of, I helped Mary with this? And suddenly you see that all Mary's family has changed, and those kids are going to grow up in a different household because they've grown up in a different household of different energy, and it's all positive. How their relationships with their kind of subsequent partners and families are going to be. Like, you can see the big picture. I truly believe that this is a huge part of the entire process of coming to grips with feeling worthy of what you're asking, and feeling that what you're asking is a fair ask, right? So the first part is to reduce the size of your promise, really connect with it, really say, well, look, I don't have to promise that, right? Kind of out there, I'm speaking in terms of bullshit and stuff that might happen. Back here, I'm thinking, no, that I can definitely do this. Like, as a coach, if I've got the right person in front of me, I can absolutely, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, do this. Promise that. Internally do the work of saying, where is this going to take them? Where's it? Like, if that promise is kept, which it will be because I believe in it, if that promise is kept, what are all the subsequent kind of ripples in the pond that are very likely to occur? And now say to yourself, is that worth 6K? Like, for her to feel better about herself physically, which is what she originally paid me for, but to have a better relationship with her husband, have more sexual intimacy and other kinds of intimacy, have the kids happy, do more stuff together at weekends, see your kids grow up into human beings who are really kind of well developed and communicate well and are happy in their lives. Is that worth 6K? Absolutely. I don't know what your answer to that is, but my version of that is abso-bloody-lutely, right? Or, no, actually, I'll promote it from that. Abso-fucking-lutely. Abso-fucking-lutely worth it. What is that thing for you? What is the storyline that you have to kind of reconnect? How can you reduce the promise? How can you kind of keep squeezing the promise down and down and down and down to one that you feel awesome about, but extending the ripples in the pond out as far as you can see? So you can see that suddenly, actually, the number that you're asking for is minuscule. What this really comes down to is the idea of falling in love with what you offer. Falling in love with what you offer. Because as soon as you fall in love with what you offer, you can't shut your bloody mouth about it. You keep talking about it. And because you keep talking about it, more people hear it. And because more people hear it, a percentage of those people say, wow, you're exactly who I've been looking for. And a small percentage of those people become the people who say, I'll give you $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000. I'll give you that. That's how it works. For you to fall in love with your offering, and you won't fall in love with it while the promise feels too big or while the impact feels too small. So just reverse that, turn it around. So I hope that makes sense. Yes, there is marketing stuff to do there, but this is about 80% of the problem that most people have with high ticket stuff. And if you address this, then the marketing stuff becomes fairly easy. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was interesting to you. I hope it kind of it resonated and helped a bit. Even if it didn't, look, if you've got questions around this, or if you just point blank argue with it and you say that's bullshit and I don't believe in it, That's fine. I'm not trying to persuade you of anything. You've asked me a question. I've answered it as best as I can. I'd love to hear what you're thinking about that. So pop some comments around, like wherever it is. If it's in Facebook, it's down here, right? Pop some comments here. Tell me what you're thinking. Till next time, take care.